The movie starts by introducing two young boys, Shin and Pyo, who are orphans. They were bought by an old man named Uncle to work as slaves. Even though life is hard, they work together to survive and help each other. They both share a big dream, inspired by seeing the skills of a famous general, General Aoki. They hope to become great generals someday too. In their free time, while gathering wood and chopping logs, Shin and Pyo train together deep in the forest. They use wooden swords they made themselves. Over time, they regularly practice to get better at fighting and moving quickly. By training every day, they become strong and skilled with their swords. One day, while they were practicing, General Chang noticed Pyo's sword fighting skills and praised him. The next day, General Chang visited Uncle's house. He told him that the royal court was recruiting soldiers from different places. He asked Uncle to let Pyo join the special training for royal soldiers. Although Shin wasn't chosen, he was happy for Pyo and promised to support him in reaching his goal. That night, before they parted ways, Shin and Pyo had one last sword fighting practice and promised each other to keep chasing their dreams. Shin decided to train even harder, hoping to catch up with Pyo and become a royal soldier too, bringing them closer to their dream of becoming great generals. A few days later, Shin decided to intensify his training in a cave on the hillside. He focused hard on improving his sword skills. With his determination, Shin's abilities grew stronger, and it showed when he managed to break a large boulder with just his wooden sword. A couple of days passed, and while Shin was resting in his small, secluded hut, he was shocked when Pyo suddenly appeared, badly wounded. In his final moments, Pyo revealed some shocking news. A rebellion had broken out in the kingdom. The king's younger brother had sent an assassin to kill the king, and chaos erupted. The royal officials had forced Pyo to act as the king's double, and because of this, he was tragically killed. Before Pyo passed away, he gave Shin an important mission. He handed Shin a map and told him to travel to a village marked on it. Pyo said that in this village, Shin would find an army that could help him become an even better fighter. That very night, Shin set off for the village Pyo had mentioned. But along the way, he ran into a group of criminals who surrounded him, forcing him to fight. Thanks to all the training he had done, Shin was able to defeat the entire gang on his own. After continuing his journey, Shin finally reached the village. There, he found a small hut where a man named King Chin was hiding. King Chin had fled the kingdom to escape the rebellion. He then told Shin the truth. General Chang had taken Pyo to the kingdom because he looked very much like King Chin. They planned to use Pyo to trick the traitorous royal officials who were working with the king's younger brother, Prince Lee Chang, to overthrow the kingdom. Meanwhile, the royal army reached Uncle's house and found Pyo's body. General Ji, who was on Prince Lee Chang's side, realized that they had killed the wrong person. Instead of killing King Chin, they had mistakenly killed Pyo, an ordinary villager. At the same time, Shin, now aware of the kingdom's betrayal and Pyo's sacrifice, feels deep anger toward King Chin. During their heated conversation, an assassin sent by Prince Lee Chang suddenly bursts into the hut, intending to kill King Chin. The assassin tries to turn Shin against King Chin, saying that he and the royal officials were the ones responsible for Pyo's death. Instead of listening to the assassin, Shin chooses to fight him, suspecting that the assassin might be the real killer. In a fierce battle with fast and deadly moves, Shin defeats the assassin. After the fight, Shin returns to King Chin, still heartbroken over Pyo's death. Despite Shin's pain, King Chin tries to calm him down. He explains that Pyo's suffering was a necessary sacrifice to protect the entire kingdom. King Chin tells Shin that his survival is the only way to stop his cruel and corrupt younger brother from taking the throne, which would destroy the kingdom. King Chin suggests that they should build a new army together to fight against Prince Lee Chang, ensuring that Pyo's death wouldn't be for nothing. Meanwhile, Prince Lee Chang, enraged after learning that King Chin is still alive, orders his allies to send more assassins to finish the job. The next day, while King Chin and Shin are traveling through the forest, they are attacked by another assassin, this time using a poison needle weapon. Shin bravely fights the assassin and, after a tough battle, manages to behead him with his sword. But soon after, Shin collapses from the poison. Thankfully, King Chin saves Shin and takes care of him until he recovers. When Shin finally wakes up, their hideout is suddenly surrounded by royal soldiers. But instead of enemies, these soldiers are led by General Chang, who has remained loyal to King Qin. General Chang pledges his loyalty and helps them come up with a plan to take the throne back from Prince Sakyo. Meanwhile, despite failing to eliminate King Qin, Prince Sakyo decided to crown himself as the new king in front of the entire kingdom's army. On the other side, King Qin felt discouraged because his forces were much smaller than the royal army. To solve this problem, one of his generals suggested asking the mountain tribes for help to strengthen their army. Listening to this advice, King Qin immediately ordered his troops to march toward the mountain tribes' territory. After a long and difficult journey, filled with many challenges, King Qin and his soldiers finally reached the borders of the mountain tribes. However, instead of receiving a warm welcome, they were captured and taken prisoner by the tribe's warriors. When King Qin was brought before the leader of the mountain tribe, he pleaded for their help to reclaim the throne, which had been stolen by his younger brother. But the tribal leaders refused. They reminded him of the past betrayals by the royal court, which had cost the lives of many mountain tribe warriors. Determined not to give up, King Qin apologized sincerely to the tribe for the wrongdoings of the royal court. His heartfelt apology moved the leader of the mountain tribe. Seeing the regret in King Qin's words, the tribe's leader chose to forgive him and agreed to support his efforts to reclaim the throne. The mountain tribe's people promised to join forces with King Qin's army and help launch an attack on the royal palace. With the mountain tribe's support, King Qin and his companions began planning their strategy. They decided to attack the royal forces from different sides. King Qin assigned Shin and General Chang to lead one part of the army, while he, disguised as a mountain tribesman, would lead the other army alongside the mountain tribe warriors and their leader. The next day, when the mountain tribe's warriors and King Qin's forces arrived at the kingdom, the tribe leader approached the kingdom's commander and told him that their soldiers wished to join forces with Prince Sakyo's army. Trusting their intention, the royal commander allowed the mountain tribe's troops to enter the kingdom. But once inside, the mountain tribesmen and King Qin's army quickly launched a surprise attack on the guards at the gate, taking control and setting the stage for the final battle. After this, King Qin gave orders to Shin and the first army to take a hidden path, while he and the second army, along with the mountain tribe leader, advanced along the main route. A huge battle erupted as the mountain tribe warriors fought fiercely against the kingdom's defenders. With the mountain tribesmen's incredible combat skills and strength, King Qin's forces were able to overpower most of the royal soldiers. Meanwhile, Shin and the first army faced a giant, terrifying monster while making their way through the secret passage. At first, it seemed difficult to defeat the beast, but Shin, using his powerful sword, landed a decisive blow, killing the creature. Afterward, Shin and his squad were able to sneak into the royal palace with the goal of taking down Prince Sakyo. However, they found him sitting confidently on the throne. Without any fear, Prince Sakyo called for one of the kingdom's top generals, General Ji, to face Shin. Shin accepted the challenge and engaged in a fierce one-on-one duel with General Ji. Both showed impressive sword-fighting skills, but Shin's determination and willpower were stronger. In the end, Shin defeated General Ji in the intense battle. Seeing that his trusted general had been beaten, Prince Sakyo tried to flee the palace. But as he reached the gates, he found himself surrounded by King Qin and the mountain tribe's army. Prince Sakyo offered little resistance as King Qin quickly overpowered him with a single powerful strike. Soon after the battle, General Aoki, the strongest general from a neighboring kingdom, arrived and approached King Qin, seeking an explanation for the conflict. In response, King Qin expressed his strong determination to reclaim the throne in order to protect it from traitors within the royal circle. His ultimate goal was to unite all the kingdoms of Japan and bring justice and peace to the land. Impressed by King Qin's noble vision, General Aoki pledged his support and vowed to help bring peace to the region. However, one of the royal generals still loyal to Prince Sakyo refused to accept King Qin's victory. He quickly ordered his troops to attack both General Aoki and King Qin. But with calm confidence, General Aoki easily defeated all the attacking soldiers with a single, powerful strike. Witnessing this incredible display of skill, the loyal general grew furious and charged at King Qin. Before he could strike, Shin swiftly stepped in and blocked the attack. With one precise swing of his sword, Shin defeated the general. General Aoki, impressed by Shin's bravery and skill, praised him and predicted that Shin would one day become one of the kingdom's most powerful generals. After praising Shin, General Aoki and his soldiers departed from the kingdom. But before leaving, Shin introduced himself to General Aoki, asking him to remember his name for the future. With Prince Seikyo and the disloyal generals defeated, King Qin and his army celebrated their victory, having successfully taken back the royal throne from the traitors. The mountain tribes people also joined in the celebration, feeling that this triumph was as much theirs as it was King Qin's. Before the leader of the mountain tribe left the royal palace, he presented Shin with a prestigious sword as a token of gratitude for his bravery and dedication. Now, with recognition from the mighty General Aoki and the honor of receiving the sword from the mountain tribe, Shin was one step closer to fulfilling his dream of becoming a great general in the kingdom. The scene then shows ancient China, around 200 BC, during a time when the land was split into 7 states that had been fighting for the past 500 years. In the state of Qin, King Aisei was overthrown by his younger brother after years of conflict. Fortunately, Aisei meets Shin, a slave with dreams of becoming a great general. Shin eventually helps Aisei reclaim his throne by uniting various tribes in the Qin region. Years later, as Aisei is about to rest, assassins suddenly attack the palace. Although Aisei tries to defend himself with his limited sword skills, the situation seems hopeless until the guards arrive, including Shin, who steps in to face the assassins alone. As the battle becomes difficult, Caryodin comes to Shin's aid, allowing him to defeat the attackers. Before dying, one of the assassins warns that their clan will destroy Qin. Not long after, a guard rushes to Aisei with news of an attack from the Wei state, signaling the start of a new war. Even though Shin helped Aisei regain his throne, he cannot be promoted to general right away. Instead, he must start as a soldier, joining other peasants who will fight on the front lines. In this war, General Hyoko, a junior to the great General Oki, will lead the Qin army. Shin, still a slave, will fight as an infantry soldier alongside his childhood friends, Bido and Bihei, who come from the same village. When they reunite, Shin proudly tells them how he saved King Aisei and earned his recognition. However, Bido and Bihei are doubtful, thinking Shin's story is exaggerated. Their disbelief grows when they see Shin talking with a war commander, wondering how a slave like him could know such an important person. Once all the infantry soldiers are gathered, they are divided into smaller groups. Shin is placed in a group with his 2 friends and a quiet girl named Kyokai, whom they first mistake for a man because her face is covered. Meanwhile, the Wei State's army, led by General Gokei, who is known as one of the 7 fire dragons, prepares for battle. Gokei is infamous for his cruelty, especially toward the Qin state. With hundreds of thousands of soldiers ready, Gokei has taken control of 2 hills overlooking the battlefield to gain an advantage. Returning to Shin, he was shocked to discover that his commander would be Bakukushin, a war leader infamous for his cruelty, but with little skill in planning battles. As the war drums thundered, marking the start of the fight, Bakukushin gave no clear instructions to the Qin soldiers. However, this did not stop Shin. He boldly rushed to the front, launching a surprise attack that threw the enemy's defenses into chaos. Seeing this, the other Qin soldiers followed Shin's lead and broke through the enemy lines. Though General Gokei initially saw Shin's actions as reckless, they worked. Shin's daring move wiped out a large number of enemy forces, took down one of their commanders, and forced the Wei soldiers to retreat. Upon hearing about the loss, a vice general from the Wei state quickly ordered his troops to bring in war chariots, which were armed with shields and weapons. This caught Shin and the Qin soldiers off guard. Even though the Qin soldiers faced strong resistance, General Hyoko told his troops to hold their ground without sending any reinforcements, which made it seem like he was abandoning Shin and the others on the front lines. Trapped and under heavy attack, Hyoko suggested they use the bodies of fallen soldiers to build a barricade for protection. Once the barricade was in place, Shin took a risky move by carrying a flag to draw the war chariots toward them. With the battlefield covered in thick dust, the enemy soldiers didn't notice the pile of corpses ahead of them, causing their war chariots to topple easily. It turned out that this was why Hyoko held back his forces. He knew the Qin army was outnumbered, and sending more troops would have led to a quick defeat. When Hyoko heard about the bravery of the farmer soldiers holding their ground, he saw a small glimmer of hope. If he could take advantage of their determination, it might change the outcome of the war. Unfortunately, this left the infantry soldiers, including Shin, to fight without help until nightfall. Exhausted and forced to hide, Shin and his friends were eventually found by the enemy, forcing Shin to face them alone. As Shin began to struggle, Kyokai finally stepped in, using her deadly fighting techniques, which looked almost like a dance. She quickly defeated many enemy soldiers on her own, but eventually became breathless from the intense fighting. In the chaos, Shin and the others, who had believed Kyokai was a man, were shocked when her face covering fell, revealing that she was actually a woman. Realizing they were still in a losing battle, Shin and Kyokai made the difficult choice to jump into the river to escape. After things had settled, Kyokai shared the reason she joined the Qin army. She wanted revenge for her sister's death. She explained that she came from an assassin clan where members from different tribes competed to become the leader, with only one person surviving the brutal contest. Unfortunately, Kyokai's sister entered this competition and was killed by her rival, who is now in the Wei state. Unable to enter the Wei state directly, Kyokai joined the war, hoping that a Qin victory would give her the chance to seek revenge. Hearing her story, Shin felt her pain and encouraged her not to give up on her sister's dream. He reminded her that much like her, he also held on to his dream of becoming a great general. The next day, as the war continued, Shin regrouped with the remaining infantry soldiers who had taken shelter on a hill overnight. Many Qin soldiers were discouraged by the sight of the massive Wei battalions, but Shin noticed a chance to strike at the heart of the enemy's defenses nearby. Determined, Shin led his group to attack the hill where the Wei state's vice-general was positioned, just as the main Qin army was being bombarded on the battlefield by the Wei forces. Shin's bold move gave General Hyoko a spark of hope, convincing him that Qin could still win. He quickly ordered all troops to join the battle, and even instructed Bakukushin to assist Shin's group in attacking the hill. The sudden arrival of Qin reinforcements shifted the tide of the battle, overwhelming the Wei forces. Meanwhile, Shin led Bakukushin's main troops in breaking through the last defense line on the hill. Bakukushin then commanded Shin to join the cavalry in a direct assault on the Wei vice-general, while the remaining infantry soldiers held off the enemy to prevent a counterattack. Though hesitant to leave his comrades, Shin trusted Kyokai to protect them and followed Bakukushin's orders. While Kyokai and the others held back the pursuing enemies, Shin and Bakukushin's forces charged toward the enemy's archer units, which were capable of wiping out half of their forces in a single strike. Using his sharp instincts to predict the arrow's flight, Shin launched a surprise attack on the archers, leaving the Wei vice-general impressed by his bravery. At the same time, Bakukushin made a daring move, charging toward the vice-general's position. In a risky gambit, Bakukushin sacrificed himself to lure the vice-general closer, allowing him to fatally stab the enemy leader with a small knife. With the vice-general dead, Shin and the Qin soldiers celebrated their hard-fought victory and the capture of the hill. However, their joy was short-lived. From behind the hill, tens of thousands of Wei troops emerged, led by General Gokei himself. Though the Qin forces were vastly outnumbered, Shin and his fellow infantry soldiers cleared a path for Hyoko's troops to launch a direct attack on Gokei's army. As the Qin soldiers braced themselves for the coming battle, they were suddenly joined by General Oki and his elite forces, who effortlessly tore through the enemy's front lines and joined Shin and his comrades on the hill. Although Oki didn't come to help the Qin army directly, he observed the battle's progress from the sidelines. His presence alone unsettled the Wei forces, as they knew that if Oki chose to intervene, the Qin state's chances of winning would greatly increase. At that moment, General Oki instructed Shin to observe and learn from Hyoko's battle tactics, pointing out that Hyoko relied more on his instincts than on calculated strategies. Oki explained that Hyoko waited for a special X-factor to appear, which would signal the perfect moment to shift the course of the battle. Oki referenced Hyoko's bold decision to launch a direct assault on Gokiai's troops as proof of his reliance on this unpredictable X-factor to secure victory. Meanwhile, Gokiai, the powerful general of the Wei state, responded by sending cavalry units to surround and wipe out the Qin forces from behind. Oki remarked that according to standard military strategy, Hyoko's attack seemed doomed to fail, but the final outcome would depend on the presence of that X-factor on the battlefield. Inspired by Oki's explanation, Shin asked for permission to join Hyoko's forces in their fight against the enemy. Impressed by Shin's determination, Oki gave him a horse, allowing him to quickly reach the front lines, eager to see if Shin could make a difference in the unfavorable battle for Qin. Without wasting any time, Shin charged into the battlefield, heading straight for the enemy forces trying to attack Hyoko's troops. Using his past experience, Shin focused on one of the Wei state's war chariot fleets, knowing they had weaknesses he could exploit. Although the chariots could carry more soldiers than cavalry, they were much less mobile. Recognizing this flaw, Shin came up with a plan to dismantle one of the frontline chariot fleets, causing a chain reaction that led the other chariots to crash into each other. His quick thinking crippled part of the Wei state's cavalry, confirming that Shin was indeed the X-factor that Oki had spoken about. Thanks to Shin's actions, Hyoko and his soldiers were able to break through several of the enemy's defensive barricades, finally leading the general to a direct confrontation with his old rival, Gokiai. The two generals faced off, and the ongoing battle paused as they prepared for a one-on-one duel. Both armies stopped fighting as Hyoko and Gokiai rode toward each other on horseback to settle the conflict. In the fierce duel that followed, Hyoko eventually gained the upper hand and managed to decapitate Gokiai. With Gokiai's death, the Qin forces claimed victory, and the Wei soldiers cheered in celebration of their triumph. Soon after, Shin said goodbye to Kyokai, who intended to continue her mission of infiltrating the Wei state, while he returned to the palace to meet with Issei and Caryatid. During the war, Issei and Caryatid had been closely studying the strategies used by the kingdom's war leaders against the Wei state. At that moment, Caryatid announced her decision to take part in the upcoming battles as a war strategist, hoping to shape the direction of the war. Meanwhile, the military officials of the Qin state, impressed by Shin's remarkable skills on the battlefield, recommended him for a promotion. Shin made history by becoming a war commander, an incredible achievement for someone who had started as a slave. His rise to battalion commander in just one battle was a remarkable feat. As the film nears its end, Minister Ryo Fui, along with his trusted allies, General Mobu and General Shohiken, meets with Issei. Ryo Fui, who is Issei's uncle, is suspected by many in the palace of being behind the assassination attempt on the king. It is rumored that Ryo Fui has his own ambitions to claim the throne of the Qin state. His visit to the palace shows his boldness, as he directly faces Issei despite the suspicions surrounding him. Ryo Fui appears confident, believing that Issei lacks the strength to confront him, especially since Ryo Fui has gained enough power to challenge the Qin king. The scene then shifts back to 200 years BC, where the Qin state won a major war against the Wei state. In this war, a slave named Shin played an important role, and because of his bravery, he was promoted to battalion commander. For the past 6 months, Shin was trained personally by Grand General Oki of the Qin state. Oki gave Shin the responsibility of helping the weakest tribes in Qin win battles against other tribes. Using his sharp mind, Shin came up with smart strategies that helped these tribes stand up against their enemies. A few months later, as the proud Qin General Hyoko was preparing to expand the state's borders, the Qin state suddenly faced an attack from the Zhao state. Zhao wanted revenge for their loss in a war years ago. 16 years earlier, during a battle between Qin and Zhao, a Qin general had brutally killed Zhao soldiers who had already surrendered. Since that time, Zhao had held a grudge against Qin for the unfair treatment. Now, with trouble brewing inside the Qin state, as Minister Ryo Fui secretly planned to take King Issei's throne, Zhao saw their chance to get revenge. Because the attack came without warning, King Issei couldn't rely on Hyoko's troops, who were busy elsewhere. He was forced to ask Ryo Fui and his loyal followers to help defend against the Zhao attack. Issei knew that this decision would put him in Ryo Fui's debt, making him even more powerful, but Issei felt he had no choice since Ryo Fui commanded a large army. When they met, Ryo Fui suggested creating an emergency force and asked Issei to to make General Mobu, one of Ryo Fui's trusted allies, the leader of the army, to fight Zhao. At the same time, a government official named Shou Bunkin questioned whether Mobu was the right choice for the job. He pointed out that Mobu was skilled in attacking, but not as strong in defense. Since the war with Zhao needed both offense and defense, Shou Bunkin argued that only General Oki could handle this situation properly. But Oki was resting after the war, so Shou Bunkin's request went unanswered. Meanwhile, Shou Bunkin also asked Shin to help strengthen Qin's army and prepare to face the Zhao forces. In the middle of the discussion, Oki and Shin suddenly entered the royal chamber. Oki spoke up, offering to take on the role of war commander. Because of this, Mobu, who was originally seen as the strongest choice for the position, had to accept being a battalion commander to support Oki on the battlefield. Afterward, Oki asked for a private conversation with King Aisei. Everyone else left the room, giving Oki a chance to talk about the king's true reasons for wanting to unite the divided states on the Chinese mainland. Looking back at the past, during the reign of Aisei's grandfather, King Shirshir, the Qin state was famous for its strong leadership under 6 grand generals, including Oki. At that time, there was a temporary peace between Qin and Zhao after Aisei's father, too, the crown prince, was taken hostage by Zhao to guarantee the peace. While it was held in Zhao, Aisei was born and spent his early years there, living with his father in captivity. One day, Ryo Fui organized a rescue mission for the royal family members. Sadly, they could only save 2, leaving young Aisei behind to survive on his own in Zhao. For many years, Aisei lived without family, treated as an enemy by the people of Zhao, until a black market merchant named Shika saved him and gave him a place to hide. Years later, Aisei learned of King Shirshir's death, which made him the new crown prince, while his father took the throne as the new king of Qin. The Qin state then sent a spy to bring Aisei back to the palace. Knowing this, Shika and her group decided to help Aisei return home by using their smuggling network in Zhao. They managed to bribe the guards along the way, but their plan was ruined at the final checkpoint. A guard suddenly fired an arrow at the box where Aisei was hiding, wounding his arm. Despite the injury, Aisei remained calm. All the years of suffering after being abandoned by his father had made him numb to pain and emotions, making him question if he could ever be a good king. However, Shika comforted him, encouraging him to safely return to Qin. Soon after, Zhao troops found out about Aisei's escape and were sent to capture him. This caused Shika's plan to fall apart, as they were attacked by Zhao soldiers. Shika and her companions sacrificed their lives to protect Aisei, allowing him to reach the Qin troops. As Aisei found Shika, gravely injured by an enemy arrow, he was overwhelmed with sadness he had long held back. Before taking her last breath, Shika asked him to promise that he would become a great king and end the wars between the 7 states by uniting all the lands in China. From that moment on, Aisei was determined to keep his promise to Shika, who had given her life to save him. Returning to the present, after listening to Aisei's explanations, Oki called out to Shin, who had been quietly standing behind a pillar. He told Shin to gather everyone back into the royal hall. Once everyone was present, the Grand General declared that he was returning to active duty as the commander of the Qin army. He also announced that Shin, his loyal student, would lead a special unit of 100 men who would report directly to him. To make his team stronger, Shin recruited Kyokai to join his forces. That night, before the battle began, Shin practiced fight moves with Kyokai. Kyokai had remarkable combat skills, which she had inherited from her clan of assassins. Curious about her abilities, Shin asked her how her clan had gained such extraordinary power. Kyokai explained that her clan communicated with the gods through a sword dance ritual that had been passed down through generations. During this ritual, the spirits of the gods would possess the performers, giving them incredible strength and skill. Because of this, the descendants of her clan could fight off dozens of attackers with ease. However, Kyokai mentioned that other clans also had similar powers, and some fighters unknowingly tapped into this energy. Among them, the most powerful were those who believed they were incarnations of gods. These warriors, known as Bushin, had martial skills far beyond those of normal people. The next day, Oki led the Qin army to the battlefield, ready to face the Zhao army, which was commanded by 3 battalion leaders: Choso, Mengoku, and Fuki, who also serve as their main strategists. On Qin's side, Oki was in charge of 3 large units: his elite troops, Ryofui's troops under the command of Mobu, and the main Qin army. As the battle began, Mobu's forces quickly launched an attack on the enemy, with Oki's elite troops striking the left side of the battlefield. As the fight intensified, Mobu's troops led the charge, while the elite forces attacked from the left flank. Noticing the Zhao army's cautious response, Oki decided to launch a bold attack, even though his forces were outnumbered. His goal was to keep Shin's unit hidden from the enemy. Oki gave Shin the important task of going after Fuki, the main leader of the Zhao forces. Oki knew that Fuki's skill in analyzing the battlefield could cause problems for Qin's strategy. To distract Fuki and make sure he didn't notice Shin's team, Oki sent 100 infantry soldiers ahead, hoping Fuki would underestimate their small numbers. At first, some of Shin's soldiers were unsure about the attack they were preparing for. But after Shin encouraged them and boosted their confidence, they all began moving toward the enemy's rear defenses by climbing the hills. Unfortunately, Zhao soldiers were already stationed in that area, forcing Shin's troops to engage in battle. The enemy's resistance caused some trouble for Shin's forces, but under pressure, Shin made a quick decision. He divided his soldiers into 2 groups. The first group was tasked with holding the cliff to block the enemy's advance, while Shin led the second group further behind the hill, where Fuki, the Zhao commander, was positioned. Word of the Qin army's infiltration into the hills reached Fuki. However, he didn't give it much attention because he was focused on organizing his main army. Fuki believed that Shin's group of less than 100 men, who weren't trained soldiers, posed no real threat to his larger, more experienced army. Meanwhile, on the main battlefield, Qin's elite forces seemed to have the advantage. Their fierce attacks caused the Zhao frontline soldiers to retreat. Seizing this moment, the Qin warriors pressed on with even greater force. But what they didn't know was that this retreat was a trap set by Fuki. As the Qin army moved forward, Fuki suddenly commanded his archers to release a storm of arrows. The sudden attack caused the Qin forces to stumble, and if nothing changed, they were at risk of losing the battle. Up in the hills, Shin and his troops watched the situation unfold. Realizing that the Qin army was in danger, they quickly rushed down to launch a direct attack on Fuki, hoping to end the battle before the Qin forces were overwhelmed. Sensing the threat, Fuki's guard forces moved quickly to confront Shin's group. But when Fuki saw how Shin and Kyokai were defeating his soldiers with ease, he realized that Shin's group was far more dangerous than he had thought. They weren't just ordinary fighters. Fuki immediately ordered his troops to retreat before it was too late. Unfortunately for Fuki, his orders came too late. Shin and his soldiers had already broken through the defenses surrounding Fuki. In a swift move, Shin charged directly at Fuki and struck him down with a single slash of his sword, killing the Zhao commander. With Fuki's death, it was clear that Qin had won the battle. When Choso, one of the other Zhao leaders, heard about Fuki's death, he quickly ordered a retreat and moved his forces to set up a new base in the hills. But Oki, knowing that the real challenge was still ahead, told his troops that this victory was only the beginning of a much larger battle. Later that night, after a long day of battle, Shin and the other soldiers gathered around a campfire to celebrate their victory on the first day of the fight. They were enjoying their moment of happiness when suddenly, they were startled by the arrival of a man carrying a large weapon. Without warning, the man attacked them. Shin and Kyokai tried to fight back, but their strength was no match for this mysterious warrior. The man then revealed himself as Hoken, one of the feared Bushin, or war gods, a figure that struck fear into Kyokai's assassin clan. As the story neared its conclusion, news of Hoken's attack on the Qin forces finally reached the royal court. Shobunkin, upon hearing the report, quickly realized the seriousness of the situation. He remembered a past incident involving Kyo, one of the Qin kingdom's 6 great generals, and also Oki's lover. Years ago, Kyo had fought a duel against Hoken, but she lost because she didn't know that Hoken was a powerful Bushin. Filled with rage over Kyo's death, Oki sought revenge by challenging Hoken himself. Oki managed to wound Hoken severely during their duel, but Hoken, against all odds, survived and disappeared afterward, his whereabouts unknown for many years. Now, with Oki leading the Qin forces against Zhao, Hokin reappeared, seeking revenge for his past injuries. At the same time, Oki, preparing to return to the battlefield, sensed Hokin's presence and knew that their battle was not just about the war with Zhao, it was also about the unfinished vendetta between them from the past. Their encounter on the battlefield would be driven by the deep history of vengeance they both carried. So the moral of the story is, if you train hard enough, you might break boulders, defeat assassins, and accidentally get caught up in a royal family's drama.